Hey everyone, and welcome to Influitive Live 2020 and our Fireside Chat series. My name is Dan Almar, and today I'm joined by William Du, Developer Community Manager at Agora. Hey William, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
So William and I are going to be talking about adopting real-time engagement as an industry standard through specifically developer advocacy. That's really what William's role is all about at Agora. But to set the stage for everybody at home, William, can you tell us a little bit about you and your role and also just Agora? I'm sure some of us at home probably won't have heard of Agora before.
Yeah, definitely. So hello, everyone. My name is William. I am the Developer Community Manager at Agora. So Agora is basically a real-time engagement company. We provide video, audio, and broadcasting SDKs for developers to build any like video communications or live streaming applications that you like. It is very flexible and it is, to be honest, like the sky's the limit. You can do whatever you want with our SDKs, and we really have the team dedicating to support all the developers and all the clients.
And tell us why, I guess maybe tell us a little bit about what you're doing around developer advocacy and maybe why it's so important. And maybe it's part of why it's so important. You mentioned, the sky's the limit for what you can do. So maybe it's good to kind of have everybody together brainstorming stuff, but tell us a little bit about what you're doing with your advocacy programs.
Sure, of course. So right now we have three main developer programs. One is called Agora Superstars. And then we have Agora All-Stars and Agora Student Ambassadors. I know it sounds like a little bit confusing for some people, but I can dive into each one of them and to give you more detailed information. So Agora Superstar, what we see that program is more like elite programs. Those are small groups of developers who are really passionate about our products and who really wants to involve and contribute contents in the communities. And we really want to keep that group of developers really small. So far we only have about less than 10 members in the Agora Superstars community. And they are really passionate. They contribute blog posts, they build sample apps. Some of them are even building like documentations or optimizing the documentations for us. Those are amazing advocates. And under that, we have Agora All-Stars. So Agora All-Star, this is where we use Influitive to host Agora All-Stars platform. So essentially, this is going to be a public platforms for anyone to join. As long as you have an Agora account, you can use your Agora account to sign into the Agora All-Stars program. So on that program, you will see different challenges and you will see, this is where we, for example, make announcements and we will also have challenges to encourage developers to try out, okay, have you tried build these sample apps? Have you tried out our new SDKs, etc. We also use the platform to recruit some of the beta testing developers. Those are the main features that we are using Influitive for in terms of Agora All-Stars. And Agora Student Ambassador is a comparatively new programs. So as the name says, it's really just talking to the university students. So what we believe is university students are actually comparatively having more free time than the professionals. And we really want to plant the seeds early. That's why we want to target mostly sophomore and junior levels of university students who study computer science or computer engineering related major. And we really set up the program so that we can not only train them how to use our SDKs, but also educate them on like real-time engagement, the industry. This is very comparatively new industry comparing to other like SaaS industry. That's why we want to start early and later on they will, when they go gets into their own personal careers, they can also like remember, oh, so RTE, I actually remember a company called Agora who is doing that, and then they will start using our SDK. So this is more like a longer shot, but we do see values in those longer shots.
Yeah, and I love that approach, because I think everybody, almost in every industry, I mean, you're trying to get customers for as long as you possibly can, right? Even if they change companies and things like that. So I think it's a really interesting strategy to kind of start early, when they're fresh as students, and, help them develop their skills there. And then hopefully, like you said, when they go out into the real world, they'll hopefully bring Agora along with them. And then that's probably when they'll be part of the All-Stars community, I would imagine.
Right, definitely. This is actually what I really believe personally. So my personal missions with the company with this position is really just to help the developers tell their own stories, and also help train them about the RT, the real-time engagement, and also help them to understand what this industry is about and what are some possibilities in the industry. So I actually, sorry, little sidetracks. So I actually joined this company really kind of in an unusual way. So I actually won the Agora's hackathon in Seattle, back in Seattle, last year. And that's when I know Agora, and a few months later, they called me back. They're like, oh, I think you have really decent understanding about developers. Do you want to work for us? I was like, for sure. And then since then, I have been training myself, and I also joined several other hackathons, because I really want to dedicate myself into the developers' shoes. What do they really care about? What are they interested in? And that's what I think myself has more advantage comparing to other people, because I also on my leisure free time, I just go to the hackathon just to have fun. It doesn't matter you win or lose, just to have fun, and really just to observe what when a developer trying to use a completely new platforms or SDKs, what do they really care about? What are they really stumble upon? In what part they really spend most of the times? And I'm trying to identify those and trying to minimize the efforts that they're going through. Really to put into a simpler way, to help them out, basically.
Yeah. And so let's talk about those developers, right? I mean, you mentioned getting in the mindset of those people you're trying to support, which I think is so incredibly smart, right? I mean, you kind of need to put yourself in their shoes to understand how to best serve them. But at Influitive, we work with a lot of different companies who, their end customers are, different groups of people. And I think every group of people is kind of a little bit unique. So when you look at developers specifically, and you try to build this advocacy program around them, what sort of intrinsic values and motivators do you think developers have that really kind of get them to participate in a program like All-Stars? What's their motivation? What drives developers in general?
Yeah, definitely. So there are a couple of things. One, I will go from the easiest thing, which is maybe company perks or gift cards. Those are things that really attracts the developers. But in my understanding, based on my experience, developers, they actually have slightly different interest. So they really wants to have exposure. Everyone wants to be famous, right? Everyone wants to have a talk in the communities. But to me, what really impressed me about developers is developers really care about the communities. They want to be part of the community. And that's why, for example, on Agora All-Stars platform, I periodically will create challenges, even with very small amount of points, but I really just want to give them exposures. For example, the developers of the month is this person, and because of the project that he has built previously. And I just want to welcome all those developers into this bigger communities. So that's actually gets into my second point, which is the exposure. we at Agora really trying hard to give more exposures for the developers, because they not only use our product but also contribute in the product. Because on GitHub, like we see a lot of developers make pull requests, make optimizations, or even find like typos on our README files, which is pretty interesting, and we want to feature them. That's why every quarter we have a quarterly developer community blog. We call it Developer Onwards. You can check it out on our website. It's available now. So basically, in that blog post, I feature not only the events that we are having, but also the project and the developers that are active in this quarter. And this really just to make sort of like human connection between you and the developers. I think this is another key that a lot of people or professionals may not pay attention to when they are engaging with the developers.
Well, and I think in some way, developers are also just perfect for an advocacy program because, like you mentioned, there's something about developers that they just love to connect with each other. They love to share best practices, their knowledge. Like if a developer spent 10 hours trying to figure something out, they don't want the next developer to also have to spend 10 hours to figure it out, right? There's just something about them where they want to share things, they want to experience, knowledge and just conversations and networks with their community. So it makes sense to have them kind of all in one place and to really try to facilitate that, like you've done with All Stars.
Yeah, for sure. That's exactly correct.
And so, everybody's goal with their program is you got to bring people in and then you got to keep them engaged, right? So let's kind of take those things separately. Let's start with that first step of recruiting people into All Stars. What kind of processes do you have in place for finding those people, getting them into the program? Like how do you pitch it to them? What do those flows look like for you?
So that's a very good question. So right now we are actually going through a rebranding process. So we are going to have a dedicating page just for developer community. And that's where we feature different programs like Superstars, All Stars, and student ambassadors there. Because what I have observed over the previous months is just like a lot of maybe like a lot of like audience in this talk that they don't quite understand what are the differences between the different programs, and that's why I want to use the bigger the page, the web page, to demonstrate what are some differences and what are you expecting to get. Setting up the correct expectation is really the key for recruiting the higher quality advocates into the All Stars program. And besides that, we also have our own, let's say, Slack channels. Sorry. So Slack channel is essentially, we use that as a live customer support channels. So any developers, if they have any issues with the technical implementations, they can ask there. We have like dedicating channels for each topics. And we periodically making announcements about All Stars there. And that's where we also recruit the new developers into the Agora All Stars platform.
And so then once they're in All Stars, how do you try to drive that engagement? How do you nurture them once they're in?
Yeah, that's a good question. So we actually have a series of onboarding process. So for the onboarding process, right now, we really just to have developers to really learn about us, check out our documentations, check out our blog posts and tutorial videos. We have a lot of resources. We actually have a team called Developer Relations team, where we have like internal developers who trying to publish those tutorial videos and articles. But at the same time, those contents are, I would say, like are everywhere. Some are in our blogs, some are on the YouTube channels, and using the influentives, using like the challenges to really help to organize those informations together. So that, for example, if you are a developer who are interested in React Native or Flutter, they just go to that dedicating page, dedicating challenge, and they will see okay, what are some documentations, what are some tutorials, what are some interesting sample apps, etc. This is very useful for them to get educated. And at the same time, I will also trying to make it fun, like developers really, one thing we really want to say is, don't try to market to developers. Developer really hates those like typical like marketing terms, like the best in the industry, like those like fluffy words. But they do really care about like some interesting stuff. So for example, when Apple had like a WWDC, and I will just make a challenge just to encourage developers to talk about the WWDC, like what are some stuff that they are interested in the following months, like in terms of release the new iOS, what are some changes, and that's where I see a lot of engagements are going on, because to be honest, like it's really low entry level. It's really a like entry level like conversation, and there's not much effort you need to do, and developer really wants to talk to each other or express themselves, and I just provide a platform for them to talk about it.
And when you look at the content that you're doing in All Stars, how do you balance it between, really product specific stuff of like, driving them to documentation, getting feedback on stuff, while at the same time not having it be like all really product stuff? Like, how do you find that balance between that and also having the fun things like WWDC conversations?
Yeah, I will say I'm trying to keep it as more like a 50-50, because at the end of the day, like our focus, the team's focus is really just to get more developers to try out our SDKs. So I will still keep adding the new technical challenges. At the same time, I will have every once in a while, I will have like fun challenges, just to keep not just fun, but also keep the developers informed about the industry. That's another purpose. And that's pretty much it. Like the 50-50 is what I will say.
Yeah, well, I think it's good that you've thought about that, and I'm sure that's also something you can kind of play around with, as time goes on and see what people are looking for. But I definitely think it's important to kind of strike that balance and not make it all about business.
Yeah.
And I love to talk about real-time engagement, within your developer communities. I mean, Agora is all about real-time engagement. Tell me about what you're doing there.
Sure. So real-time engagement is essentially a one step further from just normal communications, because in normal communications, people just care about making connections. As long as you can talk for person A to talk to person B, this is great. And we want to think further. And that's why the real-time engagement is really talking about, like improving the now moment. For example, we actually have the SDKs that really have the features such as like the noise cancellations. For example, when I'm talking to you in person, imagine like we're talking outside, like in person under great sunshine. People will often get distracted from like background noise or stuff happening around you. But with our technologies, not only that you can focus on the personal conversation, but also you can build like more like human connections. And not only that, because our technology is very flexible, there are a lot of, for example, like the developer community has developed some of the very interesting sample apps. For example, there is a superstar who built a active background blur feature with our technology. So that's when you move your heads or holding your, like wave your hands, like they will only show your human bodies and blur anything else. So those are just quick examples of real-time engagement, Isabel. And we also have a lot of like great solutions. For example, like the PK mode between the people talking to each others. We're just trying to make the human conversations and human communications fun and trying to make the connections. Hopefully that makes sense.
Yeah, and how do you bring that into your community? Like, is it about, you know, promoting people when they have these advancements? Like, obviously there's always going to be some kind of technical limitations to doing this stuff, but how do you try to bring that focus of real-time engagement into your communities?
Yeah, so that actually, I need to answer that question in two parts. So in terms of Agora All-Stars, what I have observed are most of the members, most of the advocates in the All-Star communities are comparatively junior level of developers. They are, they do have creative ideas, but sometimes they are, it is hard, it is challenging for them to actually build something that's kind of near production levels. And that's why I actually create challenges to collect like creative ideas from those developers on the All-Star channels. And then if we identify the new ideas or creative ideas, we will funnel them into the All-Stars. We will talk to the, sorry, not All-Star, like the superstars. We will talk to superstars like, hey, have you thought about doing this, this, and that? Have you thought about like doing like spatial audio with our audio SDKs? And then they will evaluate the technical side of this idea and then trying to see if this is possible to make it into reality. That way we connect two programs together and to really just to create something great, to create a sample ads for a real-time engagement.
Yeah, that's very cool. And so as you've look back on your time with developers and slowly becoming a developer yourself, it sounds like, what are some of the do's and don'ts, do you think, when it comes to working with developer communities? Like, what are things that they really like? Is there anything that you've tried and you're like, oh, I wouldn't do that again?
Yeah, so the first don't, I will start with the don't. The first don't is
we'll start negative.
Yeah, start negative. The first don't is, again, like, don't market to developers. Like, they may eventually, chances are they are not the ones who are going to buy your product. The company that they're working for or the funds that they have will pay their bills. So I will not just to directly contact them, help connect them with the sales team. Instead, I will try to make human connections, which is my first do. Really trying to make one-on-one connection. Don't be afraid on like spending the time just one-on-one with them. What you really want to do is you will need to talk to the developers one-on-one. That's the best way I can, based on my experience, that's the best way to understand someone and trying to make them to trust you. And after developer has a trust, they will be, compared to other demographics, they are more loyal than other customers. If they trust you, they will trust you forever. And another do is trying to keep a open channels with your developers. Sometimes they have feedback, they have negative experience. Those are those. Don't be afraid on the negative experience from the developers. All you need to do is to listen to them and help them solve the problems. Sometimes, most of the times, they talk about their negative experience because they want to talk to someone, not just to talk to, hey, we appreciate your feedback, we will get back to you as soon as possible. You will, like, instead you will need to ask them like, oh, okay, I'm sorry to hear that. What happened? Like, what can I help you with? I will try my best to talk to the team to help you to solve your problems. Obviously, this only applies to some the reasonable requests, but again, like, the open up the having a open channels to the developers and making the one-on-one connections are the keys here.
Yeah, and to carry that on, like, if you had to give advice to somebody who they're just starting their developer community, so this is somebody watching at home, they don't already have an existing community, what are the key things that they should be focused on right out of the gate with trying to get this up and running and trying to get, from 0 to 60 as fast as they can?
Yeah, so I think maybe my advice will be like very different from like other community manager, but my theory is trying to imagine yourself as a developers and trying to do what they're doing. Really just to step out of your comfort zones, go to Google and then find a local hackathons or online hackathons, trying to do something, trying to build something, experience that process, and then trying to, again, just trying to to be in the shoes of the developers, and really understand what are some challenges. And I think that's the top advice that I'll give to anyone who just start into this developer advocacy world, which is really just to step outside of your comfort zone, trying to get involved into some developer events, go to the meetups, trying to know them in person, I think.
Yeah. And what about just on the education side of it too? I mean, obviously, physically going to hackathons and meetups is amazing. I guess probably a lot of people can't right now in the current state, but hopefully one day soon. But outside of that, is there any sort of like online education that you're doing? Any courses or even just, reading Stack Overflow, things like that you feel like would be good resources for people who are trying to learn a little bit more about how developers think?
Yeah, for sure. I think in Agora, we have several different channels. We have, again, we have Slack channels, we have Stack Overflow, we have GitHub. I think the top priority is definitely join all those channels and trying to observe on what developers are talking about. Is there common patterns? Maybe you don't understand, because myself is not, I know some codes, but I'm not developers. But maybe even if you don't understand the codes, you can understand the common patterns. And then if just trying to be curious, when you see some questions coming up again and again, it's probably a good sign that you can reach out to them directly just to ask them, okay, so this seems like a common questions. Can you tell me more about it? How can I help you with solving your issues? And what we have observed is there are two types of developers. One is the leisure developers who do not have clear goals on what they want to do with your product. They just want to look around, to see is there any interesting project they can work on. And other ones are, we call it dedicated developers who are currently working on something and urgently needs help. Those developers tends to not so much interested about the developer community events per se, but those developers are more dedicating comparing to the leisure developers. And those developers, you can reach out to them, and then those are the developers who really need urgent helps, and really needs a lot of care, and nurture them to become maybe QSLs and leads. That's pretty much the resources I could give.
Yeah, no, and that's great. I mean, I think even just outside of developer community managers, I think it's something that we all can do is put ourselves in the shoes of our customers and learn more about their challenges, the things that we can do to make their jobs easier. I feel like that's something that permeates just the developer community. Well, William, this was terrific. You have a lot of great insights into the developer community. Really loved chatting with you today. Thanks so much, and thanks everybody for joining.
Thank you so much for having me.
And now it's everyone's favorite question time. Let's get asking.